Get in here, boys. Don't be shy.
The four men on the porch looked at each other. They were large men, the kind of large that comes from years of physical work and the specific hardening of a life spent mostly outdoors. Their jackets were crusted with snow. Their beards had ice in them. The tallest one, the one who had knocked, had hands the size of dinner plates and a scar running from his left ear to his jaw that he had stopped explaining years ago. The woman in the doorway was 5 feet tall on a good day. She was 79 years old. She was wearing a house dress and slippers, and she was holding the door open like she had been expecting them. "Ma'am," the tall one said, "we don't want to impose. You're not imposing. You're freezing. There's a difference." She stepped back from the door. "Wipe your boots on the mat. I just mopped." The four men looked at each other again. Then they wiped their boots and went inside. What they did not know, what none of them would know until the following morning, when the storm had passed and the roads had cleared, and one of them made a phone call that changed the shape of what the previous 12 hours had been, was that they had not knocked on a stranger's door. They had knocked on the door of a woman who had been feeding people in trouble for 51 years, who had never once turned anyone away from that door, who had buried a husband, raised 4 children alone, kept a farm running on a widow's income and a refusal to ask for what she could provide for herself, and who had, in all of that, developed the specific, undeceivable gift of knowing exactly what a person needed before they said it. What these four men needed was obvious. It was cold outside, and there was food inside, and the storm had another 9 hours in it. What they did not yet know they needed was something else entirely. And in 12 hours, standing in her kitchen with the snow still falling outside, they would understand what it was. Stay with this story. Subscribe, because what happens in that farmhouse between 10 o'clock at night and 7 in the morning is not something any of these men will ever finish telling. But to understand it, you have to go back, not to the storm, to the woman who stood in the doorway. The storm had come in from the northwest the way the worst ones did, not gradually, not with warning enough to matter, but in the sudden, specific way of a system that had been building over Lake Michigan for 3 days and had decided, on a Tuesday in February, to put everything it had into the stretch of rural Indiana between the state line and the town of Millhaven. By 8 o'clock, the county road that ran past the farm was impassable. By 9, the interstate 12 miles east had been closed in both directions. By 10, the only light visible from the farmhouse window was the farmhouse itself, reflected back by the snow. The four men had been on their way back from a job site in Wisconsin. They rode for a construction outfit out of Indianapolis, not the office part, the actual work, the framing and the concrete, and the structural steel that the office people designed from comfortable distances. Their bikes were loaded with tools, and they had made good time through the afternoon and the early evening, and then the weather had arrived with the specific indifference of weather, and within 40 minutes the road had become something else entirely. They had seen the light from the farmhouse through the trees. The tall one, his name was Cole Darden, 44, had been riding since he was 16, had said they should stop. The others had agreed, not enthusiastically. They had knocked on enough wrong doors over the years to have developed a specific, calibrated uncertainty about knocking on any door, and a farmhouse on a county road in a blizzard, belonging to someone who did not know them and had no reason to welcome them, felt like exactly the kind of door that might not open. It opened before Cole finished knocking. Her name was Estelle Mee Grover, and she had lived on the farm on County Road 7 for 51 years. Since she was 28 years old and newly married to a man named James Grover, who had bought the land with 8 years of savings and a loan from his brother, and the absolute conviction that what a man grew with his own hands was the most honest thing he could own. James had died in 1987. A heart attack, February, the same month as this storm, which Estelle had noted with the particular attention of a woman who understood that certain months held certain things, and that noting them was not superstition but memory. She had kept the farm, This was not automatic. There were people who said she shouldn't, who said it was too much for a woman alone with 4 children, who said the sensible thing was to sell and move closer to family. Estelle had listened to all of them and had then continued doing what she was doing, which was keeping the farm. Because the farm was what James had built, and it was what she had built alongside him, and the idea of leaving it felt like agreeing to a version of her life that she had not chosen and did not intend to accept. She had raised 4 children in the farmhouse, not easily, not without sacrifice of the specific, unacknowledged kind that parents make for decades before anyone understands the scale of what was given. She had worked the land, maintained the house, driven the school bus for 11 years because it paid reliably, and she could do it on a schedule that accommodated everything else. She had been a deaconess at Mount Zion Baptist for 40 years. She had cooked for the church's emergency meal program every 3rd Saturday for 37 years, which meant she had, over that time, cooked approximately 440 meals for approximately 7,000 people who were in some kind of trouble and needed to eat. She understood need, not in the abstract, in the specific, physical sense of knowing what a person's face looked like when they were cold and hungry and uncertain, whether they were going to be met with warmth or a closed door. She had made a decision, a long time ago, about which kind of door she was going to be. There was one other person in the farmhouse that night. Her name was Deja, and she was Estelle's granddaughter, 22 years old. Home from her 2nd year of nursing school in Indianapolis, because the semester break had overlapped with the storm, and she had come 2 days early to be with her grandmother, and had stayed because the roads had closed before she could leave. Deja was in the kitchen when the knock came. She had looked up from her textbook when she heard the door open, and she had watched 4 large men wipe their boots on her grandmother's mat, and she had sat very still for a moment, her nurse's instinct and her 22-year-old instinct arriving at approximately the same conclusion from different directions. Then her grandmother said, "Deja, put on a second pot." And Deja put on a second pot. That was the thing about Estelle Grover. The decision had already been made. It had been made 51 years ago, and it had been made every day since. And it did not require reconsideration when 4 strangers in motorcycle jackets came out of a blizzard and stood in the doorway. The decision was, you feed people who are hungry, you warm people who are cold. You do not ask them to explain themselves before you do it, because hunger and cold do not wait for explanation, and neither does the thing that is right. And that was the thing the 4 men on that porch never saw coming. What Cold Darden carried into that farmhouse, along with the snow on his jacket and the ice in his beard, was something he had been carrying for longer than the storm. He was 44 years old. He had been in construction since he was 19, when his uncle had given him a summer job that had turned into a career through the specific mechanism of being good at it and having nowhere else to be. He was good with his hands in the way that some people are good with numbers, not because he had learned it as a skill, but because the work and the mind that did it had found each other and stayed. Found. He had grown up in Terre Haute, Indiana, in a house that was rented, and that moved 3 times before he was 12, and that contained, in various configurations, a mother who worked 2 jobs and a father who was present intermittently, and then not at all, and 2 younger sisters who he had learned, young, were his responsibility in the specific way that older children in strained households learn that certain responsibilities are theirs without anyone saying so. He had been good at that too, the responsibility. At 19, he sent money home. At 22, he helped his mother move to a better apartment. At 25, he paid the deposit on his youngest sister's first place. He had done all of it without fanfare and without resentment, which was not the same as without cost. What it had cost him was the particular thing that costs the person who is always the one holding things up, the knowledge of how to be held. He had been in 3 relationships. 2 had ended because he worked too much, which was a way of saying he did not know how to stop being useful long enough to be known. 1 had ended for a reason he did not fully understand yet and suspected had the same root. He had a daughter, Maya. She was 8 years old. She lived with her mother in Bloomington, and he saw her every other weekend and on holidays. Which was not enough, and which he knew was not enough, and which he was doing everything he could to change through a custody arrangement that was in its 2nd year of mediation, and that had not yet resolved. He had a photograph of Maya in his wallet. She was 5 in the photograph. He had not updated it because the 5-year-old one was the one where she was looking directly at the camera with the specific, unguarded attention of a child who has not yet learned to perform for photographs, and he wanted that one to be what he saw when he opened his wallet. He did not talk about her to people he had just met. He did not talk about her to most people he knew, in the way that the things that matter most are often the things we hold closest and say the least about. Remember the photograph. The other 3 men were named Rafe, Dominic, and Truck, the last one being a nickname 20 years old that nobody remembered the origin of, and that had long since become more the man than the name on his license. Rafe was 38, Dominican-American from Chicago, the fastest framer on the crew, and the one who could read a blueprint the way other people read a map, spatially, intuitively, 3 steps ahead. Dominic was 51, the oldest, Italian-American from Evansville, who had been in construction for 30 years, and had the kind of competence that had stopped needing to prove itself a decade ago and was now simply present, like a tool that always worked. Truck was 33, from Muncie, the quietest of the 4, who had a way of disappearing into the background of a room, and then when he spoke, producing a sentence that turned out to be the most important thing said. They had been working together for 6 years. They were, in the specific way of men who work together in physically demanding conditions over a long period, a unit. They did not have to say this. It was simply true. And they were standing in the front room of a farmhouse on County Road 7, dripping melted snow onto Estelle Grover's floor, trying to figure out where to put their hands. "Sit down," Estelle said. She was already in the kitchen. "Not there, that chair wobbles." The 2 on the left side of the table. They sat down. The kitchen was warm, the kind of warm that has been building for hours from a stove that has been going since morning. "I'm Estelle," she said. "That's my granddaughter Deja. She's studying to be a nurse, so don't do anything that needs nursing." Deja, at the counter, did not look up from the pot she was stirring. "No promises," she said. Cole looked at the other 3. Rafe was already unwrapping his scarf. Dominic had found the chair that didn't wobble and was sitting in it with the specific relief of a 51-year-old man who has been in a blizzard for 2 hours. Truck was looking at the kitchen with the particular attention he gave to spaces, cataloging the structure of it, the way the light fell, the efficiency of the arrangement. "Ma'am," Cole said, "we appreciate this. We won't be any trouble." "You're 4 men in my kitchen in a blizzard," Estelle said. "You're already trouble. The question is whether you're worth feeding, and I generally assume people are until they prove otherwise." She set a pot on the table. "Soup first. Bread's coming." It was chicken soup, not from a can, the kind that had been going since that morning. Estelle made it every Tuesday in winter, the way she did most things. On a schedule she had maintained for so long it had become the shape of the week, rather than a decision she made. Cole looked at the soup. He looked at the pot on the table. He looked at the bread that Deja was cutting, the specific smell of it filling the kitchen. And something happened in his chest that he was not prepared for. Not sadness exactly, but the proximity to it. The specific feeling of a thing that is so close to something you've been missing that your body can't tell the difference. His mother had made soup, not this soup, a different kind from a different tradition. But on winter evenings in whatever apartment they were in that year, His mother had made soup, and it had smelled like this, like something that had been tended over time, by someone who understood that the tending was what made it what it was. He had not been in a kitchen that smelled like this since he was 14. He picked up the spoon. 11 days. The storm did not slow down. By midnight, it had deposited 8 inches on the county road and was promising 4 more before morning. Estelle had checked the weather radio, an actual radio, the kind with a manual dial that had been on the kitchen counter since 1989, and relayed the information to the room with the specific, untroubled matter-of-factness of a person who has been through enough winters to understand that the storm will do what the storm will do, and the only question is what you do on your end. "You'll sleep here," she said. "The couch is long enough for one of you. There are 2 cots in the back room. The 4th one gets the armchair in the sitting room, which is more comfortable than it looks. Ma'am, we really can't—" "Cole." She said his name without having been told it was Cole, which produced a brief, specific silence. She had heard Rafe use it at the table. "You came in from a blizzard. It is midnight. The road is closed. Where were you planning to go?" He did not answer. "That's what I thought," she said. "The blankets are in the cedar chest at the end of the hall. There are towels in the bathroom. If any of you snores, Deja will hear it from her room, and she will not be charitable about it in the morning." Deja, washing dishes at the sink, said, "I'm a light sleeper and I have opinions." Truck, from the armchair he had already claimed, said, "Noted." Estelle looked at the room. She looked at the 4 men the way she looked at most things, completely, without hurry, the way you look at something you intend to understand. Then she said, "Is there anyone you need to call? Someone who's wondering where you are?" The room went quiet in a specific way. Rafe said, "I called my wife when we stopped." Dominic said, "My kids know I'm on the road." Truck said nothing, which for Truck was also a kind of answer. Cole reached into his jacket pocket. He took out his phone. He looked at it. The battery was at 11%. He had one contact pulled up, Maya's mother. He had sent a text 2 hours ago. "Stuck in the storm, safe, will call in the morning." He had not gotten a response yet, which could mean anything, and which he was not going to spend the night deciding what it meant. He put the phone back in his pocket. Estelle was looking at him. "Battery low," she said. 11%. She pointed to a drawer beside the stove. "Charger's in there, universal. Works on most things." She paused. "Charge it tonight so you can make the calls you need to make in the morning." He opened the drawer. He found the charger. He plugged in the phone. 6 days. The false hope came at 1 in the morning, when the weather radio suggested the storm might break early. Estelle had turned it up briefly, and they had all listened, and for 20 minutes there was the specific, provisional optimism of people who have been waiting for something to ease, and have been given a reason to think it might. Then the wind picked up. The weather radio revised its forecast. Estelle turned it down. She looked at the 4 men, who were in various states of settling into the sitting room and the back hallway. "Well," she said, "so much for that." Truck, from the armchair, "Better to know." "Always is," Estelle said. She went to bed. What happened between 1 and 7 in the morning was not one thing but several, in the specific, unplanned way that things happen when people are in a closed space, through the hours that honesty tends to arrive in. Deja could not sleep. She was at the kitchen table at 2 in the morning with her nursing textbook and a cup of tea, the house quiet around her, the storm loud outside, when she heard someone in the hallway. It was Cole. He was going to the bathroom. He stopped when he saw the light in the kitchen. He stopped in the doorway. "Sorry," he said. "Didn't mean to." "It's fine," she said. "I'm up." He stood in the doorway for a moment. Then he came in and sat at the table across from her, the way people sit when they have decided that being awake at 2 in the morning is a thing to do together rather than separately. She did not ask him anything. She had learned in her first year of nursing school that the most useful thing you could do for most people was to be present without requiring them to justify the presence. She went back to her textbook. He sat there for a while, then he said, "How long has she lived here alone?" "Since my grandfather died 37 years. She's not afraid." "No," Deja said. "How does a person get like that?" Deja looked up at him. She considered the question in the specific way she considered things that had more than one answer. "She decided," Deja said. "A long time ago. She decided that the people who came to her door were her business, and once she decided that, there wasn't room for afraid." Cole looked at the table. "My daughter's 8, he said. "It came out the way things come out at 2 in the morning in a warm kitchen during a blizzard, without preamble, without the usual architecture of explanation." Just said, Deja did not react as if it was unexpected. She just listened. "I see her every other weekend," he said, "and on holidays it's not." He stopped. "It's not enough." "I know it's not enough. Are you trying to change it?" "Mediation," he said. "Second year." "That's hard," she said. "Yeah." He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his jacket pocket. He had put the jacket on when he got up out of habit and took out his wallet. He opened it. He turned it toward her. The photograph of Maya. Deja looked at it. The 5-year-old looking directly into the camera. The unguarded attention. "She looks like she knows exactly who she is," Deja said. Cole looked at the photograph. Something in his face shifted, not breaking, not quite, but moving in the direction of the thing that had been sealed. "She does," he said. "She really does." He closed the wallet. He put it back in his pocket. They sat there for another hour. Deja studied. Cole sat with the warmth of the kitchen and the sound of the storm and the specific, rare experience of not being required to hold anything up. At 3:30, he went back to the couch. He slept. Estelle was in the kitchen at 6. She had always been in the kitchen at 6. The farm had required it, and then the children had required it. And then the routine had become the structure of the day, and the structure had become the person. And at 79 she was not interested in revising it. She made biscuits, she made eggs. She made coffee in the large pot, the one she used for church mornings, because she had 4 men in her house, and she understood that 4 large men who had spent a night in a blizzard would need the large pot. The smell reached the sitting room first. Truck was awake before the others, the way quiet people are often awake before the others. He came to the kitchen doorway and stood there. "Can I help?" he said. Estelle looked at him. "You cook, some. Then you can cut those apples on the counter, the knife's in the block by the sink." He cut the apples. He did it with the practiced efficiency of someone who has spent time in kitchens that required things to happen quickly, which Estelle noted. "You cook for a crew," she said. "Sometimes," he said. "When we're on a long site and the alternative is bad sandwiches." "Smart," she said. They worked in the kitchen in the particular companionship of 2 people who are both competent in the same space and have no need to negotiate it. The biscuits came out. The eggs followed. By the time Rafe and Dominic appeared from the back hallway, and Cole from the sitting room, there was food on the table for 6 people. Estelle sat at the head of it. She had always sat at the head. She looked at the 4 men. "Before we eat," she said, "we're going to say grace. I don't know what you believe and I'm not asking, but in this house, we say thank you for the food and thank you for the roof and thank you for the people at the table. You don't have to mean all of it. You just have to be quiet for 30 seconds. Cole looked at the others. Then he bowed his head. The other 3 did the same. Estelle said grace. It was 32 seconds. It was the same grace she had said for 51 years, in the same kitchen, at the same table, with the same specific gratitude for the same specific things. The food, the roof, the people. She said amen. They ate. The storm broke at 9 in the morning. The weather radio said so. And then the light through the kitchen window confirmed it. The particular shift from white-gray to white-blue that meant the system had passed, and the cold had settled, and the world was exactly as complicated as it had been before, but was now visible. The county road was still covered. It would be passable by noon, the radio said. maybe earlier if the plows came through. They stayed until 10:30 because Estelle asked them to. Not directly, but through the mechanism of continuing to make coffee and continuing to be at the table and continuing to find things to talk about in the unhurried way of someone who is not finished with the morning yet. At some point Rafe asked her about the farm, and she told them, and at some point Dominic asked about James, and she told them that too, not performing the loss, not dramatizing it, just saying what had happened and what she had done after, and what the years had looked like. She said it the way she said most things, plainly, without omission, with the specific confidence of a person who has nothing to protect and nothing to prove. Cole listened to all of it. At 10:15, he got up from the table and went to the counter where his phone was charging. He unplugged it. He looked at the screen. Battery, 87%. He had a text from Maya's mother. It said, "She knows you're stuck. She's worried. Call when you can." He sat back down. He looked at Estelle. "I need to make a call," he said. "Would it be all right if I stepped outside?" "It's 12 degrees, Estelle said. "I know." "Use the sitting room," she said. "I've got dishes to do." "I won't hear you." He went to the sitting room. He sat in the armchair, Truck's armchair from the night before. He called. Maya answered before her mother had a chance to. "Dad," her voice 8 years old, doing the specific thing of trying to sound calm and not quite managing it. "Are you okay?" "I'm okay, Bug," he said. "I'm at a farmhouse. A woman took us in out of the storm." "Is she nice?" He looked at the sitting room, at the cedar chest at the end of the hall, at the kitchen doorway where the sound of Estelle washing dishes came through steadily and without hurry. "She's the nicest person I've been in a room with in a long time," he said. A pause. Then Maya said, "Dad, I want to see you this weekend." "I'll be there," he said. "I promise." He sat in the armchair for a moment after the call ended. He sat with the specific weight of what had just been said, and what it had cost to say it, and what it might mean that it had been easier to say in this room, in this house, than in any room he had been in recently. He thought about what Deja had said at 2 in the morning. She decided, a long time ago, and once she decided that, there wasn't room for afraid. He sat with that. Then he went back to the kitchen. They left at 11:15. The plow had come through at 10:50 and the county road was navigable. Their bikes started, which was the first good news of the morning that didn't involve food. They stood on the porch. The cold was clean and specific, the way cold is after a storm has finished and the air has been scoured down to its essentials. Cole had something in his hand. He held it out to Estelle. It was money. He had taken it from his wallet, the four of them, between them, everything they had in cash, which was not an insignificant amount, because construction crews on long jobs tended to carry cash for the specific reason that situations arose that required it. Estelle looked at the money. She looked at Cole. "No," she said. "Ma'am, I didn't feed you to be paid for it," she said. "I fed you because you were hungry. Those are different things." "Then let us do something," Cole said. "The back porch railing, I noticed it's loose. Takes 20 minutes to fix. We've got tools on the bikes." Estelle looked at him. She looked at the four men on her porch. Then she looked at the back of the house, where the railing had been loose for 2 years, and where she had been meaning to have someone look at it, and where the winter had made the looseness worse every time she had leaned on it to knock the snow off her boots. 20 minutes, she said. "Maybe 30, Dominic said. "I'll make more coffee," she said. It took 45 minutes because once they looked at the railing, they saw the post it was attached to needed attention. And once they looked at the post, they saw the step below it had a crack in it. And once they saw the crack, they fixed the crack because it was cold, and it would get worse if they left it, and none of them were built to leave a thing worse than they found it. Estelle stood in the kitchen and watched through the window and drank her coffee. Deja stood beside her. "You okay?" Deja said. "I'm fine," Estelle said. "I'm just watching them work." They watched. The four men moved around the back porch with the specific, wordless efficiency of people who have been working together long enough that the communication is in the motion itself. Who moves where? Who holds what? Who sees the next problem before it's named? Truck had the tools. Rafe had the measurements. Dominic had the wood from a scrap pile near the barn that Estelle had pointed to. Cole was at the railing making it right. Deja watched Cole. She had sat with him at 2 in the morning, and she had seen the photograph, and she had watched him sleep in the kitchen for a moment after he said good night. The way a person sleeps when they are more tired than they know, and have just been in a warm room. She did not say what she was thinking. What she was thinking was, some people need a door to open. They've been standing outside a long time and they've stopped believing it will. And then it does, and they stand there for a minute because they haven't adjusted yet. He'd adjust. She could tell. She drank her coffee and said nothing. They left at 12:30. Cole was last off the porch. He stopped in the doorway, the same doorway he had stood in the night before, coming in, and turned back. Estelle was in the kitchen. He could see her through the door. He said, "Thank you, ma'am." She looked up from the counter. She said, "You come back through this way, you stop." He nodded. She went back to what she was doing. He walked to his bike. He called his daughter from the county road, which had enough signal now. Maya picked up and said, "Did you say bye to the nice woman?" And he said, "I did, bug." And she said, "Good." He rode south. The road was straight and white and clear, and the sky above it was the specific blue that only exists after a storm has taken everything else with it. He thought about the armchair, the coffee, the biscuits, the sound of washing dishes in the morning, the grace that lasted 32 seconds. He thought about a door that opened. He had not expected it. He had not been looking for it. It had opened anyway. What happened in the weeks after was not dramatic. Cole called the custody mediator on Thursday and said he wanted to move things forward. The mediator had been waiting for this specific energy for 14 months and said so. The process resumed in a different gear. He saw Maya the following weekend. She was 8 years old and she looked directly at him with the same unguarded attention from the photograph. Except now she was 8 instead of 5, and the attention was sharper and more specific. And she said, "You seem different, Dad." He said, "Different how?" She thought about it for a moment, in the way 8-year-olds think about things when they are taking the question seriously. She said, "Lighter." He did not explain what had happened on County Road 7 in February. He would tell her when she was older, and he would tell it the way Estelle had told things, plainly, without omission, with the specific confidence of someone who has nothing to protect. Rafe sent his wife flowers the week after the storm. He did not fully explain why. She did not ask. Dominic called his adult son and had a conversation that had been sitting unfinished for 3 years. The call lasted 40 minutes. He did not go into details with the crew, but on the following Monday, at the job site, he was different in a way that Rafe described to his wife as. He looked like someone put something down. Truck wrote a letter to his mother, whom he had not spoken to in 4 years over something that had hardened past the point where either of them had known how to open it. He wrote it by hand. He mailed it before he could reconsider. His mother wrote back in 10 days, 6 lines. The last one said, "I'd like to have you for dinner when the weather clears." He drove to her house in March. She made soup. The back porch railing at Estelle Grover's farmhouse on County Road 7 held through the rest of the winter, and the spring and the summer, and the following winter. Estelle checked it every time she went out the back door. Every time it held. She had not expected them to fix the step. She had not expected the post. She had not expected the 45 minutes. But she had expected, in the general sense, that people who were met with a warm kitchen and a full table and no conditions attached to either would reveal themselves to be more than the storm had made them look like. This was not optimism. Estelle Grover was not an optimist in the naive sense. She had buried a husband and managed a farm alone for 37 years and raised 4 children on one income, and had served 7,000 meals at the church table. Not all of them to people who deserved it in any particular sense that she could measure. She fed them anyway, because the principle was not about deserving. It was about what a door was for. A door was for opening. Deja finished her first year of nursing school in May. She came home for the summer. She sat at the kitchen table with her grandmother on Tuesday evenings and watched her make soup and asked questions about the consistency and the timing and the specific way Estelle knew when it was right. "How do you know?" Deja asked. Estelle handed her the spoon. "Taste it," she said. Deja tasted it. "Well," Estelle said. Deja thought about it. "It needs a little more time," she said. Estelle nodded. "Then give it more time." She sat back down. She looked at her granddaughter at the stove. She thought about 4 men on her porch in a blizzard, wiping their boots on her mat, and the way they had looked at each other before they came in. And the way Cole had held the photograph in the kitchen at 2 in the morning, and the way the back porch railing held now when you leaned on it. She thought about James, gone 37 years, who had bought this land with savings and a loan, and the conviction that what you grew with your own hands was the most honest thing you could own. She thought about what she had grown here, not the crops, not the house, the thing you grew by opening the door every time someone stood on the other side of it, that. She had been growing that for 51 years. It was still growing. There is a kind of love that does not ask to be recognized. It makes soup on Tuesdays. It mopped the floor before you got there. It points to the chair that doesn't wobble and plugs your phone in to charge and says grace for 32 seconds and means every word of it. It has been doing this, in this kitchen, in this house, through every winter, through every storm, through every person who came to the door not knowing what they needed. Estelle Grover has been feeding people in trouble for 51 years. She has never kept count. She has never asked for recognition. She has simply kept the pot going and the door openable, and the faith, not the religious faith, though that too, but the other kind. The daily operational faith, that the people who knock are worth answering. She has never been wrong about that, not once. Here is the question this story leaves. Who opened a door for you when you were standing in a storm, not literally, but in the sense that matters more? And have you told them? If this story moved you, share it. Not because it needs attention, but because someone you know needs to hear it, and they're not going to find it on their own. Subscribe. Stay close, because the next one is already coming, and it starts the same way, with someone at a door, someone who doesn't know yet what's on the other side, and ending the same way. With the door opening, drop a comment. Tell me the name of the person who let you in when you needed it. Let them be seen, even here, even now, because everybody deserves to be seen.